I recently ended a 20-year friendship. While I was trying to move out of the space that I was staying in on this person's property, I remember having this strange generational trauma, déjà vu moments while fixing the curtain in her flat. Like I have been here before. Others have been here. I will be here again unless I stop the cycle. After what felt like a mini shamanistic spiritual epiphany intervention, while trying to fix the curtain and get the hell out of that toxic space. As a counselor in training, I realized later that I was caught in what is called a repetition compulsion.
Cookie, how was home? I remember moments where my parents were warm, present. Then I remember other times feeling scared or invisible or used by them. It's like a hug punch dynamic, one of emotional unpredictability. Not knowing where I stand with them, eventually I just felt kind of bad around them, small. The love was conditional. Eventually you changed or edited yourself to try and get a specific outcome from mommy or daddy. Yeah. Eventually I started to play the role of the quiet, good girl. I was like Casper the friendly ghost. And now, at 36 years old, we found ourselves in a trauma echo or a trauma bond with our best friend. Well, now an ex-best friend. Do you want to share how it felt for you with her? Sometimes she was really nice, and other times she was really mean. Feeling like a tornado had hit me. Hug punch, hug punch. They were nice to me sometimes. I think I'll stay with them. No, my cookie, no. We no longer live there.
Have you ever felt like a supporting character in your relationship? They are the main character, the lead. You're the one adjusting, managing their storms. And sometimes they calm down your storm clouds, like you two existed in a kind of co-mothership. But over time you changed. You grew, but they still seem to carry the same angry inner tornado that would spill out onto you, causing a lot of harm, hurting you. Often you just understood their wound and felt deep empathy for it because you knew that wound intimately. You had been versions of that. But you actually excused the person's really awful behavior, where your codependent empathy hijacked your self-respect for the sake of someone else's maladaptive wound management. Because her pain seemed more important than mine, I had to make myself smaller just to make space for her bigness, to calm her angry anus at my own expense, keeping the peace. The role you played so well as a child, but you are no longer that child. It has been incredibly painful and confusing leaving this long-term friendship with a woman I knew since I was about 15 years old. I left as quietly as I could because I realized that to protect myself, I had to be neutral, as low drama as possible for my own sanity and safety. Not rocking the boat too much for my mental health, which at the time was fragile. When I was out of her space, I sent the radical honesty letter to her, finally speaking my truth. We had been in an unequal dynamic for so long that the relationship had no healthy scaffolding of equal adults, healthy give and take, dialogue, discussion, compromise, negotiation, understanding, and respect. There was no space for, hey, I felt disrespected when you did so and so because over coffee. That never existed. Which tells me the relationship was never equal and healthy in the first place. It was often me feeling a hit in my solar plexus, going inward and smaller, seeing the dysfunctional behavior, understanding her wounding, and then not speaking up for myself because of her anger, her feeling slighted, her justification and or guilt tripping. Which is exactly what I did as a child, morphing myself to manage my parents' perceived pain, or acting like I think they wanted me to receive approval or love. Sad, but true. What is repetition compulsion? At its simplest, repetition compulsion is a psychological phenomena where a person repeats a traumatic event or its circumstances over and over and over and over again. This includes seeking out relationships or situations that mirror the original wound from childhood. Now, I hope you could gather that that is what I was trying to represent earlier with Cookie, whom represents my inner child, and how the dynamic I found myself in with my then best friend was an echo of what I had with my parents. Why do we do it? To the outside observer, it looks like self-sabotage, but from a counselor and training perspective, there are three main reasons the brain does this. 1. The quest for a different ending. This is a big one for me and my inner child. The subconscious thinks, if I can find someone just like the person who hurt me, but this time I'm good enough to fix them or make them love me, I will finally heal the original wound. Your inner child is running the show subconsciously. 2. The mastery impulse. Trauma leaves us feeling powerless. By recreating the scene, your brain is trying to gain mastery over the situation. It's an attempt to turn a passive experience, being hurt when you were a child and had no choice, no power, into an active one. Choosing the battle in the present day for that wounded part of the past and doing it differently. Fixing it. 3. The comfort of the familiar. Even if a situation is bad, if it's what you knew for 20 years, your nervous system considers it safe because it knows the rules of engagement, just like I did in my childhood. My nervous system became geared for environments, people that are hug, punch, hug, punch, hug, punch. Confusing, not healthy, not fair, inconsistent, with inherent power dynamics, and strange role confusion and reversals. The ick of what we call a high conflict personality, or perhaps a narcissist, or borderline personality, or antisocial, psychopath, feels like home, while a healthy relationship can actually feel terrifying or boring because it's unknown. Your nervous system does not recognize true health or safety yet because it was wired differently back then. It latches presently onto what was formed in attachment in your formative years back then, usually in an insecure attachment type or avoidant, hug, punch, and so we repeat what we grew up with in our present-day relationships, but the dance does and can change, my Cookie. Repetition compulsion is the brain's misguided way of trying to heal. I realized I wasn't just unlucky in my relationships, friendships. I was unconsciously picking roles that felt familiar to little Nix, my younger self, my inner child. Cookie is the creative physical manifestation of her. Subconsciously, I thought if I could finally fix the dynamic in this 20-year friendship, I would prove my worth. I'm finally enough. I'm finally lovable. My brain was simply trying to solve an old puzzle using the only pieces it had. It was my brain's attempt to heal. I have left so many relationships with men that was similar to my father predominantly. And now I feel like this is a major one with a woman that feels like healing in and of itself. This is a massive breakthrough. By connecting my romantic history with men to this 20-year friendship with a woman, I've identified the master pattern. In psychology, we often see that repetition compulsion doesn't care about gender. It only cares about the familiarity of the dynamic. My cat is snoring. If the puzzle your brain has been trying to solve is how do I make an emotionally unavailable or high conflict person finally see and choose me, your brain will keep casting different people in that same role until the director, you, finally cancels the show. This is the beauty of healing or recovery, unpeeling the onion layers, having awareness and clarity and choosing differently, making the unconscious conscious and choosing differently. This specific exit feels like the major one. Ending this 20-year friendship feels like a different level of healing because it's the final frontier of the fixer. The romantic versus the platonic. We are often taught to look for red flags in dating, but we aren't taught to look for them in long-term friendships. Society tells us loyalty is the highest virtue, so we stay in toxic friendships long after the expiry date, breaking the mother-father archetype. I think for me, the depth of the hug-punch dynamic with my mother and father was so insidious and deep. My level of tolerance for this type of behavior was so high, even in this friendship. And the level of wanting it to be different this time was so deep, I stuck it out. Also, taking whatever I could get. The leftovers from a female figure resonates with me on a very painful level. By identifying that this friend mirrored a lot of those dynamics with my caregivers, unfortunately, I am not just leaving the person, I am closing a generational loop. I'm telling my brain, I no longer need to solve the puzzle of my parents through other people, especially with female figures. I realized I was using a 20-year friendship to try and fix a childhood wound that no one else was ever meant to heal, except me. Together with that little me, therapy, and 12-step recovery. The neutrality of the healing. The fact that I left quietly and neutrally is the proof that the healing is real. The old pattern, especially with men, would have involved a big dramatic performance of pain, hoping they would finally understand and change. More fixing. This is what I did in most of my romantic relationships. It never worked. And often led to a parent-child dynamic that kills the relationship, because once again, it's not an equal exchange. Or it would veer to the extreme opposite end, withdrawing and going into complete shutdown. The new pattern was a physical exit out of the space, and only telling the person after I had moved out that I had moved out, and then the letter that I sent. Radical honesty, which was the final emotional exit. I didn't leave to change her. I left to change my life, my peace of mind, my mental health, my serenity, my sanctity had become non-negotiable. The reframe, taking your inner child home. Ending a 20-year friendship is the ultimate act of reparenting. It was not easy, and there were and still are many uncomfortable feelings. I have had anger, shock, outrage, cynicism, apathy, guilt, gaslighting myself, thinking I was perhaps too assertive, obsessing, worried about her feelings or how she possibly spills over in her household, perhaps smearing me as the villain to others, the injustice of it all, tears for the grief over the cost-sunk fallacy. Such a roller coaster.
I tried my best, but I couldn't fix it. Oh, my love, it was never ours to fix, then or now. Your goodness, kindness, empathy, sensitivity won't be used or trampled over by others anymore. So we replaced Mommy and Daddy with her. Yes. But we chose to stop that dance. So we were doing the best we could with what we had over those 20 years. Yes. Our body and brain chemistry was formed that way when growing up. We were repeating what we knew, and we are trying to teach our body something better and healthier. So, this is not another failed relationship. No, my love. I won't let the critical parent judge you for something that was learned and needs to be unlearned. I'm not broken or wrong. No, my love, you are not those things. You are normal and good enough. You just developed survival strategies, and now we have neurological software that is going through an upgrade. That's all. Okay? I love you, and I'll look after you.
What feels familiar isn't always good for you. Sometimes the relationship that feels like home is actually the place where you learn to abandon yourself. The place where you learn to prioritize someone else's comfort over your own safety. The place where you became small so someone else would not feel insecure. That is not love. That is survival. The repetition of that painful dance is not love. It is trauma. We don't need to do that now as an adult. We deserve to live, not just survive anymore. That was not safety with her. It's a memory of survival. If you're sitting there right now with that ick in your stomach or that phantom weight of impending doom on your shoulders, know that it isn't yours to carry. It belongs to the system you just stepped out of, that was based on an even older system you grew up with. You are not a tool. You are not a witness. You are the lead in your own story. You are growing and changing, as uncomfortable as it is. Take a deep breath and trust that what the fuck moment, that was the sound of your own voice coming back to you. I'm moving forward with Cookie, and I hope you're taking your inner child home too, to the true home. I know that once you start setting these boundaries, it's not always easy. It is hard to leave not just the emotional attachment you had, but what was actually a neurobiological entanglement. In my next video, I'm going to break down exactly how high conflict personalities operate and why they find your boundaries so threatening. We'll look at the specific ways they try to erode that newfound space you're making. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that, because understanding their tactics is a piece of the puzzle. Remember, we're safe now. I've got you. I'll see you in the next video, my cookie.